Woodhaven family, and welcome back to the Journey 24/7 podcast. Today we're going to continue our study through the Gospel of Matthew in Matthew chapter 13. And in this chapter we see lots of parables. We're not going to be able to talk about all of them. We're going to mainly talk about one of those parables because each and every one of these could honestly be an entire sermon. And the use of parables is also addressed here by Jesus. And it's really interesting how Jesus does use the parables to teach his followers, while also those that are not following him just are a little lost as to what he's actually saying. He's very strategic in that way, that he wants his followers to hear the message and be able to decipher the message. And you see, in the one we're going to be talking about today, the parable of the sower, when the disciples asked him questions about why he preached in parables, he took a moment to, after that, break down the parable that he had just shared about the sower. So it's not that he's trying to speak in code or hide things from his followers. No, his followers, he wants them to learn and understand and know how to follow after him and know what he's teaching. But this is just a way for him to teach those that are actually wanting to follow after him. So if a person's heart is softened towards the gospel, they're going to understand, or they're going to appeal to Jesus for more information. But if a person's heart is hardened towards him, these parables just aren't going to mean anything to them. So when we look at the parable of the sower, though, we get the initial parable, and it's this crowd of people standing on a beach listening to Jesus. They gathered around him just to listen to him. And he said to them, "A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear." Now you can imagine the disciples that were listening to this probably were a little confused at first. All these people that were gathered to learn from Jesus probably were a little confused. He starts talking about these seeds that were thrown to the ground and all the different things that happened to them. It's a little confusing when you're thinking about it through the lens of the natural world of just a seed. You're thinking, what does this have to do with what Jesus is really teaching? Well, that's why he takes this opportunity to explain this parable of the sower a little more deeply. And in doing this, too, he's also helping them to realize that when he shares these stories, when he shares these parables, there are much more important meanings to them than just a natural meaning. These stories that he shares are very intentional and have eternal meanings and eternal significance to what they need to be listening to. So he starts to describe this parable of the sower. And he says, "When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path." So if you remember, the seed that was sowed along the path was the one that fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Okay, so these are the ones that the birds came and devoured. Immediately they were just taken up. The seed had no chance to make any growth. The seed had no chance to take root in any way. It was just immediately gone. There was no harvest that was coming from this, no fruit that was coming from this. And here Jesus is saying that this seed is like those that hear the word, but their hearts are just hardened towards the gospel. There's no chance for it to take root because their hearts are just hardened. They're not open to it. Now, that doesn't mean their hearts will always be hardened. It's still worth us continuing to share the gospel. There's many times where somebody hears the gospel 500 times, their heart's hardened to it, but maybe that 501st time is when they really are beginning to soften their heart to it. So this isn't saying that that person's heart couldn't eventually be softened and that seed take root, but it's saying in this moment that their heart's hardened. The seed's not going anywhere. The seed is being taken up and devoured. Next, he talks about the seed that was on rocky ground. Back at the beginning of this chapter, when he's initially telling the parable, it says that other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Well, here he tells us that on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while, and when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. So this is that person that hears it, their heart's intrigued by it, they're interested, and they even are joyful about the gospel. But ultimately, it never really takes root. So as soon as some trials come, and we know that trials will always come on this earth, as soon as those trials come, they reject it, and they fall away. Next it says, as for what was sown among thorns, and again we go back to the original parable, and it says, other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Well, here Jesus tells us, as for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. So he says this person hears the word, they know it, but ultimately they care more about the world and the perishable riches that are on earth. And this desire for worldly things ultimately chokes out the word, to where they never see any fruit. So they may know it, but they've never had the heart change. And so what we're seeing here is then in the last, it says, as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30. So we're seeing a lot of things in this parable. The first is that this is not saying that people lose their salvation. You know, there's people that sometimes have that thought of, well, this means that people can fall away and lose their salvation. That's not what Jesus is saying here. No, he's saying that these people that fall away were people that were never truly following him. It says that they never took root. The gospel never took root in their heart. I've used this illustration before in another passage, but think about a plant, a flower. If you take a flower and you cut it and you put it in a vase in your house, it's going to be really pretty. It's going to look alive. It's going to look great. But ultimately, it's not rooted in anything. So it's going to wither away and die. And that whole time, it was never truly alive in the water. No, it was dying a very slow death. Well, that's what it's like if we're not rooted in the gospel. If our hearts are not rooted in the gospel, we may look like we have it put together. We may look like we understand. We may even know what the gospel says, but if we've never surrendered our lives to it and truly had it take root in our hearts, we're just like that flower that looks great on the outside, but on the inside, we're slowly withering away. We're slowly dying. And not just an earthly death, but an eternal death. So our hearts and our lives must be fully surrendered to the gospel. But we see in verse 23, as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, and another 60, and another 30. So this is where Jesus is saying, these are the ones that are on good soil. You're going to see them bear fruit. You're going to see that they understand the gospel, and they have given their lives to it. So this is not saying that we're saved by our works and by any means. In fact, it's the opposite, and we're going to get to that in a moment. No, we're saved by grace through faith. But if we have a true saving faith in the Lord, we are going to bear fruit. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, but we're going to bear fruit, and we're going to see the result of the gospel working in our hearts. Now he says here that in one case 100-fold, and another 60, and another 30. This is Jesus even telling us that each person's walk with the Lord is going to look different. We're not saved by the exact amount of fruits that we have, that we bear. No, we're still saved the same way, by grace through faith. So while we should desire to bear fruit and to show good works, it's not what saves us, and we don't need to compare ourselves with other believers. No, instead we should just push each other to look more and more like Christ and to bear more and more fruit. Now, like I said, we don't have time to go through all these parables. We could have talked even about that one and for much more at length. But I would encourage you to just study each of these today. Study each of these in your own personal time, because that is going to wrap up our time together today. But really dig into these, because it's just the Lord teaching us such incredible things. And it's so fascinating to see how he actually taught when he was here in the flesh. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you look at these, reflect on these, and truly dig into them. And we'll see you back here tomorrow as we jump into Matthew chapter 5.